Good evening, everyone. My name is Lanice Dazzle Harris, and I am the Catering and Event Specialist here at Relish Catering and Hospitality. Relish has been providing comprehensive catering, healthy grab-and-go meals, and event planning services at New York's iconic events and workplace dining and hospitals for almost 20 years. We are thrilled to continue our work of preparing fresh ingredient, delicious meals with you all tonight. And I'm super excited to be here with our seasoned Chef Vaughn, who will be sharing not only sharing a meal with us that not only honors the flavor of each root vegetable and herb, but also the body. So thank you for having us.
Wonderful. And my name is Vivian Lee, and I am the Bronx organizer with Plant Powered Metro New York. Plant Powered Metro New York promotes our collective health empowerment by educating about the power of whole food, plant-based nutrition. This is an evidence-based approach to nutrition that can prevent, treat, and sometimes even reverse chronic illness, including heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and more. Tonight's web event is a follow-up to our June program. We had a historical review of Afro-Indigenous plant-based tradition in the Caribbean, and we learned a brief historical overview of those customs in the Caribbean region. And tonight we're offering a hands-on approach and a culinary demonstration of some of the food celebrated and consumed in the region. And we welcome you to explore the delicious natural flavors of the dish prepared today with minimally processed, fresh, and health-promoting ingredients.
So I would like to
yes, go ahead.
Chef Vaughn Clements was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. His love for food started at the tender age of 5 when he first learned to make collard greens with a woman whom he referred to as Nanny. After moving to Sacramento, California, Vaughn grew his knowledge of the food and beverage industry through working in casual restaurants. And then he moved to New York, where he really developed his love for barbecue and Caribbean cuisines. Since then, Vaughn has used his talents to help open several restaurants with different companies throughout the U.S., including serving as head chef at notable restaurant Justin's for 8 years. And Vaughn now leads the Relish Culinary team in menu creation and execution. And so we're going to hand it over to Chef Vaughn. Vivian, did you have one more thing you wanted to say?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. As a reminder, we are recording this web session so others can join and replay it in the future. We ask you to keep yourselves muted to minimize the background noise and allow Chef Vaughn to proceed with this demonstration. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we will leave time at the end to address them. If there are some questions that relate to Chef Vaughn's actual cooking, specific ingredients, we will ask them in real time. Please introduce yourself in the chat box, tell us where you're from and what you like to learn from today's event. So back to you, Chef Vaughn.
Good evening, everybody. Well, this evening we are going to make a traditional Rastafarian stew called Ital. Now, to give you a little fact about Ital stew, it is derived from the word vital. The fact of vital food should be vegetarian and unprocessed. The stew consists of mostly starchy ingredients such as plantains, peas, squash, taro root, potatoes, carrots, okra, onions, collard greens, and rich coconut milk. Now, if you've gotten the recipe prior to this webcast, you'll be seeing all the different ingredients that I'll be adding to the dish tonight. First off, I'd like to show you how we're going to add the cilantro, about a half a cup of cilantro to the recipe. I am going to cut a chiffonade cut into this for this recipe. Chiffonade basically means it's a ribbon cut, which is better than chopping it as if you were going to chop it up, because these greens can become black very quickly. And as you chiffonade it, it keeps its flavor and color very, very well. So We're gonna take that, place that inside of a bowl. First thing I'm gonna add to the recipe is 2 cups of water and 2 cups of low-fat coconut milk. Now, if you like, you can add regular coconut milk to this recipe. The low-fat coconut milk, don't be alarmed, will curdle some. And that's because there's not enough fat content in the actual coconut milk itself. But don't worry, once you add the starchy root vegetables into it, it'll be fine. Now you're gonna allow that to simmer for about 5 minutes. And then you're gonna start adding in your root vegetables. The first thing I'm gonna add in once we do that is I will always start adding in tomatoes. Now, mind you, this hasn't simmered as of yet, but I'm going to show you. We're going to add 1 whole tomato. Now, mind you, these are all cut already. My onions are cut. My sweet potatoes are cut. If you can see them here. And then we're going to add taro root. Now, if you want, I can show you what the taro root looks like before it is actually cut. This is the taro root. Or there's another name for taro root, which we call what's the name of it? I'm sorry. Dashin. Taro root has all these different veins inside of it, which gives it's kind of a purplish texture to it. Slice the ends off here.
As Chef Vaughn is doing that, I just want to inform that there are 2 camera angles, and if you'd like to see his close-up, you're able to pin the video of the preferred screen. So please go ahead and do that so you can see what Chef Vaughn is doing. And if anyone else is having problems, please let me know in the chat box.
So you're going to cut the taro root into medium-sized chunks. Now, it is important that the taro root is very starchy, has a lot of starch flavor to it. But as the starch releases from the taro root, it can overcook, and you don't want to overcook your root vegetables. But it's important that all your root vegetables are cut at an even consistency, so they all cook evenly. So first thing I'm going to add is tomatoes.
Chef Vaughn, we have a question. Is the peel of the taro edible?
No, it's not. It's more of it's got like a bark consistency, like a tree bark consistency.
Thank you.
I'm gonna now then add in my sweet potato. I'm only gonna add in half of the sweet potato. Then I'm gonna add in my onions. And then I'm gonna add in my thyme and my coriander and my pimento berries. Now, mind you, what I did here is the thyme, the scallions, and the bay leaves, I tied into a little like sachet because what's going to end up happening, the vegetables are going to break down in the actual stock, and it'll be harder for it to. So this is an easier way for it to come out, but you'll still get all the flavor from all of these herbs. I'm going to add in my pimento berries here, or whole allspice. Add in my garlic as well. I turn the heat up a little bit just so it can start to simmer better. Now allow that to cook for another 5 minutes. And then once I've allowed that to cook 5 minutes, I'll start adding in my other root vegetables. My butternut squash, my plantains. Now what you want to do is you want to get a plantain that is not, there's different variations of the plantain when it comes to the texture. When you first go to the grocery store, you can get them at any market, whatever. The plantain is a little tougher than an actual banana. It'll have a bright green color to it, and that's when it's not as ripe. But once it starts to get ripe, it'll start to see the yellowness coming out and some of the black. And you can even this is when it starts to become a little more sweeter, even to the point where you can get a whole black plantain. Now, mind you, it's not bad. It's just a lot of the sweetness is coming out. So this is the texture. You want it to be in between ripe and unripe plantain. I'm going to add half of that to my actual stock as well. And I'm going to add half of my butternut squash. Now, this recipe could call for pumpkin. The traditional Ital stew would use pumpkin in it, but you can use any root vegetable that's available in a market near you. And pumpkin is right now is not in season, so I'm going to use butternut squash because butternut squash has a lot of sweetness to it, and it gives off a good flavor and adds a lot of consistency to the actual stew. What I want to also mention is the pimento berries or the whole allspice. You want to also take that out of your stew at the end of the once it's you serve it, because you don't want to bite into it. Then afterwards, this is going to cook for a little bit more. I'm going to add in my turmeric and my black pepper. Also, with the tradition of the Ital stew, true Rastafarians don't use salt in their stew. And this is also because they do not want to kind of camouflage the flavors of the root vegetable. And salt can camouflage those vegetables, but you're going to get a lot of sweetness, a lot of texture from the root veg. You can add salt to the recipe, but if you're going to add salt to this recipe, let it be a true like pink salt, a sea salt, or some sort of kosher salt, but no salts with any iodine in it, because they don't believe in any of those kind of processed salts or anything inside the stew, because they want everything to be kind of true from the earth as they're eating it. Anybody have any questions?
I don't see questions here, but it'd be great to hear more about the culinary philosophy of the Rastafari community and
some fun facts about the Rastafarian culture. Rastafarians have a symbol, the lion symbol, and this is from a prophet that they was born in the 1800s. His name is Haile Selassie, who was a prophet. They used to call him the Lion of Judah. And that was kind of a good fun fact. Their colors are red, green, gold, and black. Rastafarians do not eat meats. They do not eat pork, and they consume a lot of fruits and vegetables, and they are not allowed to drink coffee, cow's milk, or alcohol. Now, I haven't met enough Rastafarians in my life, but the ones I do know, they are true to this fact as well. And then they live in, there's about 24,000 Rastafarians that live on the island of Jamaica currently, out of the 2.7 million that live in Jamaica. And their beliefs is there to go back to Ethiopia, which they call their homeland, which it has a lot of these true rooted vegetables there, and then they grow up on. So this stew is cooking very well. Now, this stew will traditionally cook about an hour and 20 minutes. Again, you want to continue to stirring it, because as the starch starts to come out of the vegetables, they can get stuck to your pan, but you can adjust your temperature. I'm working on a induction burner today, but A gas stove is, I love working better on gas stoves than do any type of electric equipment because you can control the heat better with these items. So also now what you can do is, if you want a little heat, I like heat, and you know, I'm a spicy guy. I love spice in my food. You can add a Scotch bonnet pepper to your recipe. If you don't want all the heat, you can just place it right into the stew. If you do want a little heat into the stew, you can just prick it, or you know, open it up with your finger, and you'll get some of the spice from the seeds that are inside there. So I'm just going to add it as it is, and then I'm going to add in my taro root. The taro root is the one I was telling you has a lot of starch in it, and that taro root can break down really easy. So you want to be able to be careful to watch that.
I wish you all could smell the flavors. It smells amazing.
I wish we could too.
Anyone have any questions?
We do have a question, but before I do, you mentioned the Scotch bonnet. How spicy is it relatively to another common pepper we might consume?
How spicy is it to what I'm sorry?
Scotch bonnet compared to regular peppers people use.
They can be somewhat spicy. It depends on the amount of Scotch bonnets you use. They're almost similar to a Spanish pepper. It's called ajíce. Ajíce peppers are, I would say, a little bit more spicier than the actual Scotch bonnet. My wife uses ajíce in a lot of her dishes that she makes. She makes her own sofrito from scratch. So if you could confuse the two if you didn't know what you were picking up. The ajíce pepper is a little smaller in size, but they actually have the same colors and the same bodies with them. So I would think that ajíce is a little spicier. But again, if you take out the seeds of the pepper and stuff, you're gonna take away a lot of the heat. That's where the heat comes from, is the seeds of the actual pepper.
And then the question we have is, how do you avoid plantains becoming oxidized after you cut them? Because your plantains look so very nice.
The plantains from browning after cutting.
The root vegetable?
The plantains.
Oh no, then they won't. They're going to oxidize pretty fast. I mean, once you split the body of the plantain, within minutes they'll start to discolor. I like to put all my root vegetables and/or bananas in a little bit of cold water to take it so it doesn't oxidize. However, sometimes people will add a little bit of lemon to it, but again, you don't want to mess up the flavor of the actual banana. So place it inside in water, and it'll keep for a while.
One final quick question related to the Scotch bonnet. Is it different from the habanero pepper? What's the difference between the two?
The difference between the habanero and the habanero is a lot spicier than the Scotch bonnet. Even if you take the seeds out of the habanero, it's still going to have a good heat to it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
I'm going to add the remainder of my root vegetables, the sweet potatoes, the butternut squash, and the plantain. And then I'm going to add in my cilantro as well. And the chayote. If you know what a chayote vegetable is as well. This is the chayote vegetable, the root veg. Looks like it has a fruit look to it. Sometimes people call it a fruit. It is a part of a fruit family, and then it looks like the inside looks like eating an apple. You could confuse it for an apple. Has that green consistency to it. It's got a lot of water in it. But it also has a root inside of it as well, which I'll show you. That you want to there's a root inside there that you don't want to eat that root, so you can kind of just cut that root out of there. And again, this one will cook very fast as well, but you can still same consistency on the cuts. And you don't have to place this one in water because it's not going to, because of all the water that's already in it, it's going to stay. This one, it's almost like if you're having eating a braised apple. It has that type of consistency. I want to show you what this looks like as it's cooking. I know it's hard for you guys to see this, but these are all these vegetables. And you would think that, oh, there's not enough liquid in there, but from the water from the chayote and sweet potato has water in it, the carrots, also, they're going to break down really well. You're going to get a nice thick consistency once the stew is done. And again, add salt if you want to. There's a lot of sweetness in this. We made this earlier this week, and Lenice was, first thing she comes over and says, "Oh wow, it needs salt." But then after you eat it a while, all the flavors just start, the boldness of the flavors just start coming out.
Yes, that first bite, because we're so used to heavily salted food, you notice the difference, but after a few bites, your palate just kind of opens up and you taste all the different flavors. And so it was really refreshing to have something that was healthy and nutritious and flavorful, and you didn't feel guilty about eating. It was like an energy soup after eating, actually.
That's great.
This is going to cook for another 25 to 30 minutes. And I've got this on high heat. I'll turn the heat down once the vegetables start to break down, because I don't want my vegetables to become mushy, but I want some of the boldness of it and some of the texture to stay there. Anyone else have any questions?
No questions in the chat box, but how can we find the chayote? Where is it often found?
Any international market, you can find the chayote. The chayote is a summer vegetable, but I've been able to get it year round. Where we here at Relish, we put it in a lot of our salad dishes. So it's good all year, but you can definitely find it right now at any supermarket that has international product in there. I know there's a Western Beef, they carry it. Stop and Shop, all those type of grocery stores, Whole Foods, they will definitely carry it. And it's inexpensive. You can get it for like $2 a pound. So it's I love chayote. When I was introduced to it, I was just like, this is a great veg. And again, you can eat it raw.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So it can be raw or cooked.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. We have a question. How else can you eat taro?
How else can you eat taro root?
Yes.
Taro root can be made into some like a puree. But you gotta, again, when you're making it, you've gotta break the taro root down, because there's a lot of the fibers in it. You'll find it a lot in salads. You'll find it in you can fry it if you wanted to. Like if you wanted to bake it, you can do that. I find it in a lot of Spanish dishes. You can use it as a substitute for any meat product in a taco, if you wanted to. But it's really good. It's got a lot of flavor in it. But again, it is very fibrous texture. So you want to if you were to cook it, if you want to make it into a puree, you want to be able to put it through a fine mesh strainer just to kind of get some of those fibers out.
Wonderful, thank you.
If you slice them thin enough, you can make baked chips.
Yes, you can. You can make them into chips. Yeah, Lenise said it because you'll find it in veg chips. They're very, very good. I have had them as chips. So.
And for that, could you also bake it yourself using the oven at home?
Yep. Mm-hmm. But again, like the.
You actually have the fruits? Okay, wonderful.
Pardon? I'm sorry?
Oh, no, I was going to ask if you could show us one, if you had one available. Perfect.
It's got that root, but it's, again, it's not, you know, it has like a bark consistency to it, texture.
And is that also found in most international supermarkets or supermarkets that carry? Mm-hmm.
Taro root, yes, it is, and taro you can find it a lot in the summer. Also considered like if you know what a crumb is, and you'll find it at the bottom of the crumbs. It's different in Hawaii. They call it kalo. The taro root crumbs are food staples, and they're in Africa, and Oceania, and South Asia cultures. You find it there. It's you know, that's where but in the spring and the summertime is where you most commonly will find taro root, but I've gotten it all year round as well.
Taro roots improves digestion and gastrointestinal as well.
Sorry, Lenise, can you repeat that? We couldn't catch your voice. The mic didn't catch your voice.
Taro root improves digestion and gastrointestinal health.
Wonderful. And you'll see, well, at least for me, I'm seeing very new ingredients. And I think it's very indicative of the fact that all these natural foods, you know, the word Ital actually comes from the word vital. So I think the Rastafarians, they got it right. And these foods are very health promoting and very healing too.
You could also add, I mean, for this particular recipe, I didn't add any, but you could add like okra, kale, collard greens. If you wanted to add beans to it, if you wanted to get more of the protein, any pulse bean, kidney bean to it, just to give it a little bit more texture and protein in it. But a lot of times I've seen this recipe cooked with greens. I would do a medium slice on the green. I wouldn't shred the actual greens itself because it kind of loses itself in the actual stew. But you could serve this over quinoa if you wanted to. You can serve this. It's, I mean, again, I have some finished product here.
Oh wow! Look at that color.
You know, some people would think it's a curry dish, but you know, it'll taste the curry. It's got, I mean, a good texture to it. And again, this one right here doesn't have any salt in it, but it's very good. Now, mind you, if I were to want to add some salt, I'm going to add some pink salt to it. You can add it if you like. I'll add a little bit of this.
And is that color coming from the plantains?
It's coming from the turmeric.
The turmeric.
And this holds up in your refrigerator. I mean, you can freeze it if you want. It'll hold up into your refrigerator for like 3 to 4 days.
Okay. Wonderful. Do we have any more questions about the dish, about the ingredients? Has anyone tried this before or heard of it? can feel free to.
I mean, it's Ital stew is not a well-known stew amongst a lot of people, but it's, you know, I've spoken to a few Jamaican friends of mine, and when I was telling them I was going to make this stew, they immediately they were like, you know, wow, you go, because again, it's a stew that I think that's only been created probably, I want to say 20 to 25 years ago. And again, there's something that if you're just taking actual different roots and you're just compiling it together. I saw a video of this gentleman making it, and he added everything that he had in his refrigerator pretty much to the stew. It's as long as there's no meat in the stew, and you're adding all vegetables and or root vegetables and or beans. It's called Ital because it's because it's vital to the body.
Mm-hmm. We have a few questions here, or one. Can you eat do you eat the stew with bread, or do you eat it as is? Okay.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah, roti. Oh, we were talking about the other day. This would be great with roti. Huh?
And
roti is made of chickpeas. It's like almost like a flatbread. I've never made it myself. I have a friend of mine who's made it, but it takes a little bit of time to make. Consists of chickpeas, salts. There's no eggs, flour, and there's no baking powder or anything in there. So. You can put it over quinoa. You can put it over if you wanted to add couscous to it. You can do couscous. If you could eat it as a side dish from another vegetable if you wanted to do so. But again, that's the stew. It's a good summer and or winter dish as well. I would eat it. I would definitely eat it year round.
Wonderful. I think I've seen this dish for those that live near or can travel to Uptown Veg. It's a restaurant located in, I want to say upper or east side of Harlem, and I believe they have Ital there. I think that's where I had it first. I'm not sure if they're open right now, but.
What's the name of the restaurant?
Uptown Veg.
Uptown Veg. Okay.
Yes, it's on. I'm just looking up the address. 125th East 125th.
Another thing with chayote vegetable is you'll find it a lot in stir fries. Salad. I did say salads. It's especially in Asia, and the plant is eaten more like a potato than anything. And then the shoots and leaves are also consumed as well from the chayote.
Now, so for the oh, go ahead, Lenise.
I don't have anything right now.
Oh, I got it. Can you remind us how long the stew takes to cook fully?
This will take you to get all the ingredients and the tenderness of all the root vegetables, say about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Again, you don't want to rush the vegetables because then you'll break down the roots of the actual vegetables. So if you simmer it, like the first part, like, you're cooking it on bring up the boil, then you're adding in you're gradually adding in your root vegetables, and then you're gonna turn your stew down just so it can simmer. because you want to get all the flavors incorporated together. You want to bring out some of the starch of the actual roots. And then, like right now, at this point, this is almost done. So we're on for about almost 40 minutes, and the vegetables have cooked down some, but I'm still like, right now I can see like my butternut squash still has it's still a little more time to cook. The taro root cooks very fast. Butternut squash can cook very fast. So again, you want to be able to make sure you have a good texture in your stew. Any more questions?
Any other
I
questions?
see my wife has joined.
Oh, is your wife here too?
Yes.
Welcome. So Chef Vaughn, is the end product, is the consistency of the stew super soft where all the ingredients kind of blend together, or are they still intact?
You're going to get a somewhat of a blend, but then you're going to have some that are also intact. That's why when you get the thickness of it that comes out, and like, so I can I'll pull you some of this one out from different from the other stew I have. So even though this still needs a little bit more time, this is what you want your stew to actually look like once it's done. You see how the vegetables are still intact. You can see the difference of all the vegetables, but then you still have a little bit of liquid in there. I mean, this one I made a couple of days ago, but again, this is what your finished product should look like. But again, not allowing your roots to be pulverized, so to speak, for lack of a better word. And again, you want to pull out those herbs, because you don't want to eat those herbs. You want to pull the herbs out. You want to pull the Scotch bonnet out and the pimento berries as well, because you don't want to eat those in your stews. That's why I tied it with the string, because it's easier for me to take out. Again, you can use cheesecloth to make a little sachet. You can add the Scotch bonnet to the sachet if you like, and you add the. Does everyone know what a sachet is?
I think so. Do you have the actual material you can show us?
I don't have a sachet with me, but that's why I did the tie, because that's a I would say a decomposed sachet, so to speak. But a sachet would consist of all those herbs in cheesecloth or some sort of fine mesh cloth. You tie it up with a little bit of string, and you just place it into your stock or soups or whatever you're going to make it, and it's going to have all those herbs are going to come out. You have to use fresh herbs, mind you. You don't want to use dry herbs with this recipe, because you're not going to get the same flavor as you would with the fresh herbs. Always go with fresh herbs.
Sachet sounds like an herb tea bag.
I've heard of lavender sachet. It's so nice to be able to use it in culinary in a culinary setting. We have a question.
You want to get all those flavors out, and then again, like no one wants to eat the stem of thyme or rosemary. I mean, some of my favorite herbs are rosemary, sage, thyme. I carry them in my house all the time. And again, even if you're not using those herbs right away, you can make an herb oil. If you don't have time to make a sachet, because a lot of fresh herbs die very fast. So within a couple of days, you want to be able to use them, especially rosemary. Rosemary within a day can lose its texture and its flavor. And you want to, and then when you're going in, you got to smell your herbs. They should be able to have a really tight smell to them. Rosemary should have a nice potent smell. Cilantro, you want to be able to check those herbs when you go into the market. Because if you're not able to smell the freshness of the cilantro or the rosemary or whatever, then they don't pick them out. again, be able to be very specific when you're picking out your herbs.
Speaking of herbs, crushed allspice, yes or no? Can we use in this stew?
You can. Again, you're gonna, it could kind of harper on the flavor profile a little bit. That's why I'm using the whole pimentos, because then I can take it out. Because then I don't want the powdered consistency or that flavor, kind of taking over the true essence of this stew. And that's why some also is, they're small, in size. You can actually just put them in your sachet as well, if you want to. If you don't have a cheesecloth in the house, what I would suggest is using some sort of fine mesh cloth that doesn't have any fragrance, and you can tie it up and use that as well. This cheesecloth is not like a common thing that you would find in a grocery store. I think Whole Foods does carry it, and you can get it in small batches.
Okay, that's some great tips.
As my wife was on there, I was telling everyone about your how you make your sofrito and the fresh herbs that you use from sofrito, and then the difference between sofrito and the ají pepper and the Scotch bonnet, which they have. They look very similar. I'm always the one who goes. She sends me out to get these fresh herbs for the sofrito, and I always have to ask her what the ingredients are, even though I've gone several times.
Yeah, he said pepper is sweet, where the Scotch bonnet obviously is really hot. But they look very similar, so they can be confused. A lot of times they have been.
Thank you for that tip.
Welcome.
Anyone else have any questions?
Do we have any more questions coming in?
No.
Did everyone have dinner? I would love to take a taste of that stew.
It's again, it's one of those where once you've eaten it, all you want to do is take a nap.
It's very hearty.
Denise took some home. How did your family eat it?
I have two small babies, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they're also plant-based. And it was easy for them to just digest it, especially with my little one. She doesn't have many teeth. And it's a guilt-free dinner. You know that they're getting all the nutrient-packed roots there. It's tasty and it's filling. So they slept really well as also. Thank you for that.
Very kid-friendly.
Yeah. And even though it's a lot of ingredients, easy to cook because you can kind of just put it on there, have the fire on low, and tend to other little things versus constantly watching the pot.
Mm-hmm.
So I like those one-pot meals as a mom.
As any stew that you're going to make, because they have all these different components to it, when you have time, prepare these items ahead of time. If you know you're going to make them, you cut them all up, you put them in your fridge, and put them together. And then once you're ready to make the stew, all you do is you're just putting everything together. Because sometimes people don't have time to just sit there and cut all like 5, 6, 7 different ingredients at the same time to try to make something, because we all are limited with time. You're coming home, you're trying to get dinner on the table, you're trying to do that. So, plan out your meals, if necessary. My wife and I, especially now with COVID, we've been able to plan out our meals ahead of time, because, and the great thing about it, if there's anything great about COVID, which there isn't, is you're able to eat at home and prepare all your meals instead of as going out to eat. But I would still definitely say, try to frequent, your local restaurants and or vendors and stuff. The people who need, the finances and to be supported. And that's why Relish is also, we want to be able to, allow people to, take some time and not having to cook all the time. And we can bring these meals to you, and also these recipes, and you can make them in your house. This is an easy recipe to make. It's not hard at all. Basically, you just put it together and you let it sit there and you allow it to cook. You just got to be able to just be mindful of your temperature when you're cooking it. And once it's done, by the time you know it, it'll be done, ready to serve. I think like Lily said, it's easy. It's easy on the palate, and it's hearty. You're going to be full. You're not going to feel like you didn't eat. It's something that you felt like you actually had a nice big meal, and it's guilt free, as you said.
Yes. Someone asked, would Ital stew be available at some Ethiopian restaurants, given its origins?
Would it be available where? I'm not sure if it would. There's a couple places, Ethiopian and African markets around where I live, and they serve food. I've never gone in there to find out if they serve it or not, but I don't know if this would be a traditional dish that they would serve, because it's so kind of like geared to what Rastafarians eat. But it's a possibility that they would make it or make something similar to it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. All right. We do have a few minutes left. If anyone else has some lingering questions before we start to wrap things up. Chef Vaughn, I would like to ask, given the different root vegetables that are involved in the recipe, do you also take into consideration of the time it takes for each to fully cook?
Sorry, say one more time, please.
Given the different ingredients, do you consider the cook time as well? Is there certain ingredients you put first so that they start cooking before you put the other vegetables that don't need that much time?
Yeah. If again, if you're gonna, like taro roots and the butternut squash to make it cook faster, you can add those at the end of the dish, or you can add them in gradually, because again, you want some of that starch to come out. The starch from the taro root is the one that's giving that boldness and consistency to the actual dish. But you want to be able to, those items, and that's one of the things that I noticed when I started making the dish. When I was making it with the low-fat coconut milk, I started noticing how the separation of the milk and the water. So there were some concerns when I started making it. But as I started adding the root vegetables in, I started seeing how some of them were breaking down quicker than others. So yeah, I would definitely take the taro root and the sweet potato and maybe add those in as a lastly. The same thing with the cilantro. You don't want the cilantro to break down. Add that in at the tail end of the recipe. And then the Scotch bonnet as well, because if you add the Scotch bonnet in too soon, with all the heat, it can burst by itself. So you don't want to, if you're not looking to have a lot of heat in there, just add that in right at the end, and so you get some till it becomes tender, and then you can take it right out.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, Lindy's there. Now we can see you. Perfect. And I think we have a final question here. Is the stew being cooked on low heat or very low heat?
Starts off with a little bit of high heat to start cooking some of the vegetables, and then I would stay on a consistent medium to low heat throughout the end process. Again, you don't want if you're on a higher heat, a lot of your roots, the starch is going to start to break down, and it's going to stick to your pan. So low heat is the way to go. It's good food like that takes a little bit of time to cook. So that's what you want.
Wonderful.
You
Thank
can, and what I also heard is you could actually, if you wanted to bake this in like a Dutch oven, you could also do that as well.
All right, wonderful. Okay. If those are all the questions, should we take a final look at the finished product, Chef Vaughn? Beautiful. Those colors are so vibrant, even after such a long time of cooking.
Yep, and you still get the nice greenness of the cilantro. You got the body of the sweet potato and the carrots in there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chef Vaughn.
Very welcome.
All right, Lenice, shall we start to wrap things up?
See me. Thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Chef Vaughn, for sharing your culinary expertise and time to demonstrate this healing, vital soup. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here with you all and just learning and gathering local community. And if you're interested in learning more about Relish, our prepared meals, our pantry bags, event planning services, please feel free to email me at lenice@relishcaterers.com. And also you can visit our website at relishcaterers.com. Thank you so much, Vivian.
No problem. And I've also just dropped Lenice's email address there. In addition to tonight's cooking demo, Plant Powered Metro New York is presenting many online educational programs ongoing this summer in both English and Spanish, and we actually have one at 7 o'clock tonight. We invite you to check out our full events calendar on our website at the link that I am putting in the chat box right now. And if you're new to whole food plant-based nutrition and you'd like to learn more of the science and the promise of plant-based diets for healing, we encourage you to register for our program, another culinary demonstration on Sunday, July 26th with our culinary educator, Carol Levy. And next Wednesday, we'll be presenting a very special web event featuring physician Dr. Milton Mills to speak on the racial health disparities as far as nutrition. So we encourage you to sign up. And thank you once again for joining us. And thank you to Chef Vaughn and Lenice for making this event happen. And we wish you a pleasant evening and happy cooking.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.